Today, I am joined by Sam Antar, the man who spent 9 months collecting documents to help with the exposure of the fraud that Attorney General Leticia James committed. He's also been digging into George Soros, somebody that my audience is very curious to see whether George Soros and his foundations are attacking America. Sam, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you, Steve, for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. I want to discuss George Soros and your forensic accounting findings. You believe that the government and the FBI would be interested in. I want to talk to you a little bit about that money flowing into Mamdani, and also get your thoughts on the latest information on Leticia James. Now, you and I had privately texted. You said, hey, I'm a big fan of Data Republican. She's digging in on all this George Soros stuff. I know you've been digging in as a forensic accountant. What are you finding as you start to dig in to George Soros, the open society? Because right now, the FBI and the U.S. Treasury, they are very interested to see what they've been doing with their money.
Well, I've been digging in from the income tax angle. Al Capone, what did they get him on? Income taxes. Other people like Data Republican are looking at it from a different point of view, and that's great. There's a guy by the last name of Morrow. He's looking into it. It's great. There are other people looking into it too. My feeling is the easiest and most transparent way to dismantle this corrupt syndicate of nonprofits or tax exempts is to look at how they are evading the income tax, how they are violating the income tax laws of the United States of America. Okay. And having been involved with money laundering and in the old days of Crazy Eddie, I figured I would look into it. And I found a lot of substantial, troubling information relating to that syndicate.
Okay, so I mean, I always ask, why don't we just simplify taxes? Why is it 70,000 pages long? I mean, like, they make it so complex, but as you say, sometimes evading taxes and defrauding the government is the only way to get some of these big, well-oiled machines, to bring them to justice. So what have you been digging into? What have you been finding?
Well, first of all, the way that I look at it is I look at substance over legal form. Each individual entity by itself may be engaging legitimately or illegitimately. Each transaction by itself may be legitimate or illegitimate. But the most important thing is when you put together the behavior of this group of tax-exempt entities where the source comes from Soros, right? And the end product is manufactured candidates like Zohar Mamdani and AOC and very, very far left candidates, you could see that these nonprofits are operating as I would call a grassroots laundering syndicate. For example, Soros has the Open Society Foundation, to promote open society. It is known as a 501c3. So when Soros gives that money to the 501c3, it's considered a charitable donation. Now, Soros many years ago put a large amount of his estate into the 501c3, the Open Society Foundation. That helped him, number one, cut his tax bill, but also more importantly, it took those assets out of his estate. So if he passes, they won't be taxed at estate tax wealth. At estate tax rates. Now you go to the next step. You say to yourself, okay, fine, what's he doing? What he's doing is, we all know about generational wealth. He's creating generational influence.
Okay.
With a large amount of wealth to back it up. So when people talk about tax breaks for billionaires or whatever, you notice that the progressives were very silent about this. And Soros, he doesn't care because he's already insulated. He's already taken the steps. With Soros, strategy I believe he's doing is he's cutting out any potential people from being billionaires like him and, competing in the world marketplace for whether it's hedge funds in the financial marketplace, whatever. So what he's doing is he's ensuring his position at the top of the economic hierarchy. Now, so what happens is you give the money to, I'll call it a 501c3 or a charity. He gives it to his charity. It's now tax deductible. Now his charity can either give the money directly to what's known as a 501c4. That is a political action entity. Donations to 501c4s are not tax deductible. So what you do is you give it to a 501c3 who hands it over to a 501c4. And you'll see these 501c4s that he funnels money through intermediaries like his own foundation or his foundation to another foundation to a 501c4. You see these 501c4s are active in New York politics. I'll give you an example. His foundation gave money to an entity known as Bend the Arc, which is a 501c3 charity. Bend the Arc was Bend the Arc was formed. The founder of Bend the Arc is his son, Alex Soros, right? He's the founding chairman. Okay, so he gives the money to 501c3. Now, it also has a sister entity called Bend the Arc Action or something like that, which is a 501c4. The money gets transferred from the 3 to the 4, and then the 4 actively campaigns on behalf of Zohran Mamdani, the progressive that's running for New York. Now, what's interesting about this is not just the tax angle. What's interesting is that the 501c4 is not considered a PAC. When it does work on behalf of Mamdani, you won't see it in the New York City campaign filings, and you won't see it as donations to Mamdani, because in New York City, you have to list all of the people who contributed to your campaign and PACs that are battling for you or against your opponents. None of that shows up. So there's a large amount of dark money that's going into Zohran Mamdani. Now, I just gave you the simplified version of it.
Yeah.
Now, I can go like this. Soros 501c3 charity to the Tides charity, the Tides charity to a 501c4, et cetera, et cetera. It's all layered up. That's why I say you have to not look at each transaction individually. You have to look at the totality of the network and where the money is going.
Okay. So then as you start to dig in, are you finding things that are questionable, illegal, things that the FBI might be interested in looking at?
Yes. And I have submitted an original whistleblower complaint to the IRS and 8 supplemental whistleblower complaints to the IRS. And I'm working right now on a 9th supplemental. I provided them details, maps, the whole 9 yards, showing them the money flows, detailing the charts. You've seen some of the charts on my website. If you want to pull it up, fine. This is, I've given them all of this information. Now, when you give to the IRS, they take, but they don't give back. So I have no idea what the IRS is doing with it. All I know is if they had rejected my whistleblower complaint, they would have done it already, sent me a nice letter. Thank you, Mr. Antov, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, we don't feel it's going to result in us collecting any taxes.
Gotcha. Okay. Really quickly, not to leave George Soros too quickly, but when you handed off all of your months of research about Leticia James, did you have the same silence for a while and then they took action, or did they immediately take action?
Same exact thing. But here's the thing. In the old days, I made my money doing whistleblower claims, either doing them, submitting them independently where I've collected money on, and also working for law firms that represented whistleblowers who needed a person like me to dissect what they were saying in regular language, the complicated accounting, and see if they can dig further. Now, with Leticia James, I am not being paid by anybody. There's no whistleblowing reward at the end of the rainbow. Leticia James started actually after my son had passed. After my second of my, I had two sons that passed away out of three. After the second one passed away, I'd gotten into depression. I really wasn't into it. You know, the normal stuff that you would expect for a grieving parent. But as I started getting my head together, I started looking at New York City, the corruption, the politicians, etc. And I fell into Leticia James. And I saw a red flag that said, put everything aside for now. Let's focus on Leticia James. And having been involved with law enforcement before I was retired, right? Whatever, they read my blog. They read my blog religiously. Okay, now I hadn't been very much active on my blog. I was getting into it slowly. So they saw what I was They saw what I was writing, and Pulte, who is the head of the FHFA, who made the referral letter, said that he'd read reports, and some of the stuff that I've done, and also there's a gentleman by the name of Joe Gilbert, my colleague and friend, the stuff that we did together. Okay, you could see it's plain as day. It's in the referral letter, and some of it he actually even made it into the indictment.
Okay. I want to show something, but I do want to ask you one question. I mean, I feel like I know the answer to this, and I don't want this to be offensive, but on the grand scale of getting media attention, your name is very small compared to Donald Trump. Is this why she's blaming Trump for all of your work, even though Trump's not been involved?
Listen, is Trump taking advantage of the situation? Yes, and he should, as any politician would, as any prosecutor would. Okay, so that is fine, and that you can't blame anybody for. Okay, now, is Trump involved with me? No, I am a Democrat. Personally speaking, I don't give a damn about his tit for tat with Leticia James, with this and that and this and that. I look at the evidence, and the evidence shows a pattern of false mortgages over a period of 42 years. This is not a one-off mistake. This is not something where she didn't read the form right, unless, of course, going to Howard University like she brags and being a lawyer, she doesn't know how to read. I doubt that very much, that she doesn't know how to read. This is a pattern where every single mortgage that she put a signature to since the Ronald Reagan administration in 1982 or 83 had information that was false on it.
Okay. I figured that was the answer, but just wanted to hear it from your own mouth. Let me play a clip for you and my audience. This is from Kash Patel, and then we'll talk about it.
Every single seed, money, donor, organization, and funding mechanism that we have. And I want to echo the Secretary's comments on Scott Bessent, who's allowing us to map out these networks through their financial criminal activities, which has been going on for decades. And I would like to remind the American public, they built this disease temple of corruption over decades. And in 8 short months, Mr. President, you have crippled their foundation because of your leadership here, because of the interagency, because of people like Deputy Attorney General Blanche, and because of Attorney General Pam Bondi's fearless leadership to go after criminals wherever they are. They will not be able to hide. They were able to hide and conspire with prior administrations, and we are exposing their corruption from within. And we will go to every single city in this country under Operation Summer Heat and the other operations we are doing at the FBI to bring these criminals to justice. We will arrest every single one of them from whatever perch you sit in, private or public, no matter how your goal or your ambition is. It will be crushed by the Constitution, because the American people deserve law and order, and that's what we're going to give you.
Woo, that's some pretty bold language. So he says that the FBI is working with the U.S. Treasury to map out all these criminal organizations. From a forensic accounting's perspective, what do you hear, and what might they be doing to create this map?
If you read between the lines, okay, what Kash Patel is saying is, we've crippled them. No, we haven't crippled them yet, but that's okay. You're working on crippling them. But he's also saying we're looking at the financial transactions of these entities. Now, the press and a lot of other people are focusing on who the groups they are funding. I am focusing on how they are likely violating the tax code to fund these groups. So again, as I said to you earlier, they're a Republican. She's a very bright lady. I love her. I really do. Not romantically, she's whatever, but I love her work. And she is looking at it from other people looking at it from different angles. I am looking at it from the forensic accounting angle as it relates to violations of the tax code. Because if there are violations of the tax code, there's going to be a very big bill on these billionaires that are systematically converting charitable dollars into political action. And not only that, these tax-exempt entities can lose their tax-exempt status. And that's the way, that I believe is the best way, rather than proving, well, you got to get these people, catch them in the act of burning flags or whatever. It's a much more complicated case, and it should be pursued. But, the government is capable on pursuing a situation from different dimensions. And that's what people don't really understand, because it gets oversimplified for television, unless, of course, I'm on a broadcast like yours where I have freedom to speak more widely. It's not like 3 minutes on the air, boom, 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 you're off the air. You actually have a situation where somebody can explain really how widespread the investigation is, what it involves.
Yeah, I think I saw you on News Nation, and they gave you like 4 minutes. I thought, this guy's too brilliant for 4 minutes. He needs more time than that. But just going back to Kash Patel, would the U.S. Treasury have all the movement of money, all the financial transactions for a group of forensic accountants to really dig in and map out the corruption?
Yes and no. Okay. There are bright people in the Treasury, except that over the last, since Reagan, we've gradually reduced the number of white-collar prosecutions that the federal government has charged people with. Every president. It's Donald Trump, it's Joe Biden, it's every president. In fact, there are less prosecution of white-collar criminals today in 2025 than when I was doing white-collar crime in 1986. And the economy is humongously bigger. Now, it's not because people are more honest. And what's happening is that we don't have really the kind of dedicated white-collar police force that we should have, because white-collar crime has gone largely unnoticed as compared to violent crime, and white-collar crime can be just as brutal as a violent crime. So I don't think they have all of the resources. Number two is you have to have somebody that's able to put it together. So what I feel is my role in this is to put it all together for them so that they have the roadmap to investigate further.
Okay. When my children were young, we would take them to church. They would do connect the dots, to pass the time and be reverent. Is this what they're trying to do? They're trying to connect the dot between Antifa or the illegal invasion of the border and connect the dots back to these different 501c4s and C3s, yes, up to whoever gave the money?
Yes, and I give them credit for trying to do it, but it's a very, very labor-intensive task to do. And it might take years for an investigation to have fruition. Whereas I believe the way that I've approached it would take a lot quicker. In other words, go for the low-hanging fruit, okay? Because if they lose their tax-exempt status, which I believe they should because they violated the law, I believe they violated the law. If they have to, there's no statute of limitations on civil cases with the IRS. I can commit fraud in 1943, and the IRS can still go after me on a civil basis, not a criminal basis. And one thing I've learned as a former felon myself is sometimes the worst punishment the felon can get is in the pocket.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a jail term.
Yeah. No, I love what you're doing because, like, think about Al Capone. Oh, they would have loved to get him on alcohol. They would have loved to get him on killing people, silencing people, right? But what do? They get him on taxes. And so I think the approach that you're taking is really well thought through, and it's also a shortcut, right? Like they're going to take years to connect this dot. George Soros, they have put so many layers in to insulate him, but you're going after it a different way. Final question. A lot of people.
It's like I found the wormhole.
Yes.
Through the universe to get from one point to the other without taking 45 light years.
Yeah. Let me get you out on this. You've seen this before. Where are we at with Leticia James? I know she's still going out there saying Trump's too pale, too stale, too male. I'm being persecuted. This is a white man against a black woman. New York's going to prevail. But at the end of the day, do you think it's pretty black and white that she is going to go to jail?
Let me just make a comment about the too male and all of this, whatever. She should concentrate on hydration, not crowd validation. She should drink a lot of water and keep her health up. Crowd validation doesn't get you anywhere. It gets you the applause, makes you feel good for a little while, but it gets you nowhere. Okay. So let's look at the evidence. Okay. She owned 2 properties in Virginia and 1 property in Brooklyn. Okay. And then there's a Queens property from 42 years ago where she bought it with her father, but the mortgage was husband and wife, whatever. Let's leave that one out. That's 42 years ago. Let's simplify it. Okay. So the property that they indicted on her now is known as the Peroni Avenue property in Norfolk, Virginia. How was it found? When I was going through her financial disclosures to New York State, okay, I noticed she purchased the property in 2020. It didn't show any mortgages in her disclosures 2020, 2021, and 22. But all of a sudden in 2023, I see 2 mortgages that she discloses that were twice the value of the property or even more. That's a red flag. So as a forensic accountant, what we do, and this is to educate your audience too about what forensic accountants do, we work backwards. I order the title report on the property. So what do I discover? The 2 mortgages that she disclosed are not listed anywhere in the property records. Unrecorded mortgages. That's and maybe that's why she got more twice the value of her property. When I looked at the title report, I saw when she purchased the property in 2020, she had a mortgage on it of about $137,000. That mortgage was never disclosed in 2020, 2021, 2022, and in 2023 when she disclosed the other mortgages. So that raised red flag number 2. She's obviously lying on her financial disclosures to New York State. That's called mail fraud. But then you start looking, you go past the money trail, and this is what I hope the IRS and the Treasury does when they investigate, not just Tish James, but the network. You look at the documents. So I looked at the mortgage document that for the mortgage that she did not disclose, and it said that she bought it as a second home and has the main control over the premises at all times. The exact language, hold on, I'll give you the exact language if I can find it here. Okay, borrower will occupy and use the property as borrower's second home and maintain exclusive control over the occupancy of the property. Okay, now I cross-checked that with her New York disclosure. Remember I said she disclosed the property, but she didn't disclose that initial mortgage. The New York disclosure said something different. It's an investment property. So number 1, so automatically you have the first conflict. So when the feds, with their subpoena power, which I did not have, subpoenaed the insurance policies, what did they find? The insurance policy said owner-occupied non-seasonal use. So she had to, right. In other words, it wasn't a second home. She was doing it as almost like a primary residence. But here's where it comes together. In her tax return, which the feds also subpoenaed, which I couldn't get access to, okay, she reported 0 personal use days. So how can you have an insurance where you're saying it's owner-occupied non-seasonal use, where she says in absolute terms, 0 personal use days? Okay, and if If it's 0 personal use days, yes, it is an investment, but the investment is not a second home like she claimed to the mortgage company. So you have different statements to different entities that all favor her. Now the press, when they analyze, oh, it's Trump, it's this, they don't give you all the elements that are involved. Indictments are purposely bland. Okay, they don't read between the lines. As me as a forensic accounting professional, and Tracy Conan just came out with an article about it too. Another forensic accounting official, and lawyers do. These people are paid for narrative, not for analysis, and it bothers me. But that's another story. So they don't really show you all the elements that went involved in the indictment on this specific property. They say, oh, it's only one document she signed. No. There were 3 other documents: the insurance policy, the New York State disclosures, and the income tax returns, all conflicting with each other. Then the broader thing is they don't talk about the pattern of false mortgages in Brooklyn, because that kills the narrative. It says they don't want it. They want to show it was just a mistake and Trump was looking for that little gotcha, whatever. Okay, but that wasn't the case. So you look at this one property that they indicted her on. That's why they indicted her on the Peroni Avenue property. Now, why didn't they indict her on the others? Because they don't have to indict her right away on the others. What they're going to do, okay, from my experience, I don't have any inside information, but I can tell you, having worked on both sides of the law, having happened to me on the wrong side of the law, what they are going to do is come up with superseding indictments as they collect more evidence. So she will get indicted on the other properties and the other things that she did with those other properties. And more than that, they are, you can assume, because that's what the FBI does, right? They're interviewing the people, the insurance broker, the mortgage broker, the emails, and this and that. And if these people don't cooperate and flip, you know what's going to happen? They'll probably get indicted too. So this is way from over. Okay, so she can pound her chest like this all she wants. Okay, I can tell you, having gone through it myself, it doesn't do anything for you. At the end of the day, a Virginia grand jury in a very solidly blue state indicted her. Not the U.S. Attorney's Office, not Donald Trump, not even me. It was a grand jury of her peers.
Yeah, in a blue area. So, I mean, she deserves her day in court, right? That's what we say in America. But it does sound like Big Tish might be heading for the big house, and that it's just crazy that the things that she was accusing Trump of, she was actually doing herself. I think that's one of the biggest notes of hypocrisy. It's wild.
Well, you remember the days with Ivan Boesky when he got arrested and Giuliani was going after all of these Wall Street crooks? Me, having not gotten caught yet, of course I was disgusted by all of these things that were happening, even though I was doing it, I mean, criminals, the prisons are filled with criminals who never thought they'd get caught. Otherwise, why would they do the crime?
Yeah.
And she's been used to people accepting her BS without critical examination for over 40 years. And she thinks that can continue forever. It doesn't. Eventually, somebody with half a brain or a quarter of a brain like me goes and looks at the transactions and sees that she's committing crime. That's the mistake that she's made. Overconfidence. Too much confidence in what she was doing.
Okay. Final question. I appreciate you coming on. Do you think George and Alex Soros are in the same boat where they say, we're too rich, we're too powerful, no one in the government dares to come after us, we're too big to fail? Do you think they've been overly confident in the way they've moved money around the country?
Yes, I can tell you yes, and I'll tell you why. Okay, and the details are in my blog, and it's very difficult to get into on a short broadcast. Okay, a lot of this stuff that I traced was errors that I would never have made if I were laundering money the way that they're laundering money. So they did get overconfident. They did do too much. They went too far. And now they're gonna have to answer for it, unfortunately for them, but fortunately for the rest of the United States of America.
Okay. Wow. You never disappoint. You're a national treasure. I think you deserve the Medal of Freedom when we see her go to jail. And
I'll just take a good sunset where I can take photos again, like I used to fill my Twitter feed with.
yes.
I'll take that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I just want this, my personal aim, I want to dismantle this tax exempt syndicate, and also dismantle the machine that's running the Democratic Party in New York. Okay. There are a lot of decent Democrats. They're being pushed out. Today's news is that Fetterman is being pushed out. Whatever. And it's unfortunate. There were decent Democrats on the grand jury, you can assume, and they still voted to indict. The problem is that the Democratic Party, unfortunately, is being hijacked by these far leftists who are really just Democrats in name only. And that's an unfortunate thing, because America needs a strong two-party system, one slightly left of center and one slightly right of center. Unfortunately, the left of center is going to far left of center, and that's not good for our country.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. We'll get you out on that, Sam. I'm going to put direct links to your X as well as your website so that people can find you. Thank you for coming on. I hope you have a great weekend.
And thank you for having me on, and you can call me anytime you want.
Okay. Thank you so much.